Hello, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Few would argue, and Democrats would be the first to agree, that impeachment is risky business. Is the risk worth it? Can the Democrats save America and themselves? As we approach election 2020, the stakes are high for all. This week on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, I, your host for the hour, Halli Casser-Jayne, and my partner in politics, former White House correspondent, the politically savvy Matthew Cooper, take a look at the state of our politics, the special elections that officially turned the Commonwealth of Virginia blue, and ousted a Republican governor in a decidedly red state, at the impeachment inquiry, and oh, so much more. Let's get started. We begin. Okay, my friend, Mr. Matthew, how lovely to speak with you again. I have been off for a week. I've been having a little bit of a rough time, but it's going to get better.
Well, it's great. It's great that you're back, and it's great to be talking.
And what a couple of weeks we have had. I tell you what, this is better than any film I've watched in 100 years. What is going on in this country? I want to start first with we're recording now Wednesday morning, but I want to start with last night in the election results.
Sure,
because I find some of that fascinating, but even more fascinating in some ways than the elections results themselves is the way the pundits have been calling it. So what we have here is we had an election in the state of Kentucky, or the Commonwealth. They're a Commonwealth too, aren't they? Kentucky, one in Virginia, and one in, whatever, it didn't matter. But the one let's start with what happened in Kentucky, by the way, the home of two people, Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul, who we'll talk about in a minute, and the results of that, which was that the Democrat beat the very unpopular Matt Bevin, the unpopular governor, Republican governor, a mini Trump, even the day after Trump went down to try and save the day. Let me hear your thoughts first, and then I'll weigh in.
Right. Well, I think it was an impressive Democratic victory for Beshear, who's the son of a former governor. The way he won his relatively narrow victory was really big margins in the suburbs of Cincinnati and in the blue areas of the state like Louisville and Lexington, where the University of Kentucky is. He also did pretty well in the historically Democratic eastern part of the state. We're running pretty good margins in those counties, and that was enough to give him a victory. It may be contested, but it looks, it was on the order of 6,000 votes, and it looks like he's pretty safe to win. I wouldn't overinterpret it to say that like Mitch McConnell's going to lose. I think he'll have. Trump's still carrying the state by a lot next year. But look, I think it's it shows when you've got a pretty good name and Democrats run a pretty solid race. They can eke out a victory in Trump country. But if Beshear was running and Elizabeth Warren was at the top of the ticket, I'm not sure it would have come out the same way.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute for sure. But let me say something that I just found out this morning. Mitch McConnell is now the most unpopular senator in the country. I think he's been polling about 18% in Kentucky. I think this will influence what happens to him. That's my opinion.
Well, I think he's definitely got vulnerabilities, but a lot of it depends on the year they're running, and a strong top of the ticket can pull some of these guys over, and so I think don't underestimate the effect that Trump winning the state by 20, 30 points can have.
If he wins it by 20 or 30 points, because I think impeachment's going to have some effect on that. And I think that's one of the things that we might want to talk about, which is I do know that they tried to use impeachment, or Bevin did, as part of this game. And, I don't know, Trump tweeted that he was down 20 points the day before he went there, and he only lost by a few. I don't know whether that's true or not. I think, okay, Mr. Trump, can we see those inside polls? But that said, I do think that there's something to be said, that particularly, and I was so happy to hear you mention those, urban areas where Dems are consistently now taking back the vote that they lost. So I think that's important to raise there. And I do think that has something to do with maybe what happens to McConnell. It also have to do with how McConnell handles the impeachment thing, which is why I brought up impeachment there. I think that could be very, very interesting. But at the heart of it was the same thing that was at the heart of the last election, which was this was a fight again, Matt, over health insurance. Hello.
Yes. No question. Beshear's father was, when he was governor, was one of the few governors in the South to, accept the expanded Medicare money that came with Obamacare. Yeah, Medicaid. Sorry, I said Medicare. I meant Medicaid. Bevin is retreated on a lot of that, and that's had an effect. People like their health care. I mean, they don't like it, but they got it. And, in a state with a lot of opioid problems, that heightens interest in this. So,
isn't Kentucky an interesting state, by the way? Can I just interject that? It's a fascinating state.
Oh, sure. It's, look, I think politically it's interesting. It's a border state. So it's Southern in disposition, but it's not like the Deep South. It's a state Clinton managed to win in '92.
It has a history of Democrats winning up until recently, actually. So,
it had a lot of historic Democrats. And look, I think what we saw that was national that we're seeing elsewhere is that these suburbs are really flipping. Everywhere. Trump is just so unpopular with the more affluent voters in the suburbs. And, that's hurting him. That's why you saw Democrats pick up in Houston and Oklahoma City and other places that are traditionally, strong Republican.
Yeah, and like I said, I think this is, this is like something that's continuing, for through 2 cycles now. So I think that's going to be interesting. Let's move on to Virginia, because my old state, miss my.
Sure.
I was so happy to see Loudoun County, because back in the day, when we all of us moved out there, when there was nobody there and we were on our big farms, it was Republican.
It was rural.
Oh my God! And look what's happened to Loudoun County. We used to call it Lousy County. Now it's Wonderful County. I mean, it's like God bless them, because they really came through again. But Virginia, my goodness, look what happened there. I mean, Dems own Virginia.
Well, it's definitely much less of a swing state. I mean, just going farther back, it was so Republican, I mean, Clinton never really contested there. Bill Clinton, it was super Republican. Then Obama helped break it. He won it twice, and Hillary won it by a bigger margin in 2016 than Obama did in 2012. It's, it's gotten more suburban. There's a lot more population growth in the D.C. suburbs and the Richmond suburbs, and those are trending strongly Democratic. So that's really given Democrats a huge boost statewide. Plus, it's one of those states where the Hispanic population's gone up a lot, so that's helped. And, they got the legislature back, and for the first time in a generation, they controlled the governorship and both houses.
Yeah, pretty. Did you hear this little tidbit? Do you remember in the last election when there was a toss-up for the the House of Delegates, and this Shelley Simmons lost in the
and came down to a coin flip, right?
And she won last night.
Yeah, and
I love that.
Right, and there was some margin. I just, the Republicans got way out over their skis on immigration. The fairly moderate Ed Gillespie had lost a gubernatorial race running a super anti-immigrant campaign that backfired. So, I think it's become a blue state.
It's become a blue state. And when you look at the overall picture, I think we can have this discussion, Matt. Let me throw this out at you. I don't think that Trump is as rock solid as a lot of people think that he is, or that these weird polls aren't really picking up what's going on in that suburban area. I think this is worth discussing.
Yeah, well, Trump has real vulnerabilities. I mean, I wouldn't overly extrapolate these off-year elections. They have their own kind of dynamic. And again, you don't have a top of the ticket exercising a poll. But look, Trump is clearly, he's not that popular. He's not that popular, especially when you consider, the economic conditions and some other things that should be helping him more. But, I think people are, I think he's leaving aside impeachment. I think he's just wearing people down, just
you think
the constant, cacophony of stuff is just taxing. And I think that's having an effect. I wouldn't predict one way or another what's going to happen next year. That's going to depend on if there's a third party bid by someone, who the Democrats nominate. There's a lot in play, but yeah, look, he's got real weaknesses.
And I want to say this as well. Because he is who he is, Matt, I don't think you can look at any election and not think in many ways it's a national election. He is such a big part of everything. I know if you get into these, small town, states or whatever, I still think that he is the issue to a great degree, where other, in the past that wouldn't be so. There's no
right.
local really anymore. Somebody pointed out to me yesterday, you and I, where's the local press? It's almost non-existent.
Right.
And people are getting their news. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Plus, when you throw in the fact that there's a lot less, cross-party voting, I mean, I think people are, they're voting the color of the uniform, not the name on the jersey.
Right. And if you wanted to say more, sorry, was there a comma and then you were going to continue? I had too much coffee this morning. Talk to me. Was there more?
Well, I just, in olden times, there was a lot more, crossover voting. So you had a couple of 100,000 people in the mid-'80s who voted for the very liberal Ohio Senator Howard Metzenbaum and for Ronald Reagan. There was just more, flexibility in people's vote.
Right, it wasn't straight ticket.
Now it's more straight party line, and that's it's not entirely clear who that's good for, but that is a fact. And it does lead to sort of everybody trying to turn out their guys rather than trying to persuade swing voters.
I don't know. I do think that the Dems are doing something good right now, which in the past they haven't been very good at, and that is they are going into areas where they didn't think they could win and which they immediately wrote off and making inroads in that area. And I think that's phenomenal. I don't think the Republicans have gotten that, and they may pick it up by 2020, but in the last two off-year elections, you have to say, oh my gosh, they've been really good at going in and mining votes from some of those areas they just wouldn't have ever considered even sending, money into. So
there's no question Democrats, they won seats in Kansas, Oklahoma,
right.
Orange County, California. I mean, they're pushing into a lot of places that they hadn't before. But, those members are using a very different strategy than what the presidential candidates, by and large, are doing
so far.
And that is the rub for the presidency next year.
Yeah, well, that's going to be something else. We're moving on. We're moving on to impeachment. Oy, darling. That's what I have to say on this one.
Yeah.
This goes down. I mean, there's so many tentacles to this at this point that it's almost ridiculous. And I know that the Dems' whole theory is keep it simple, stupid, or stupid, keep it simple. And of course, the Republicans are doing, and Trump is doing everything he can to make it not simple. And therein lies the rub. But I want to start with something that you're probably going to be surprised that I'm going to start at, and that is that I think the Democrats are proving very successful at bringing to the public exactly what Trump did and keeping it somewhat simple, no matter how many distractions the Republicans try and pull off. I'll tell you where I think the Democrats are going to lose it, though, and that is they have not been good at, I'm going to use the word fomenting, because that's the kind of world we're living in right now, where you just got to gin everybody up and make them crazy. At going after the Republicans on their complete immorality. which is how they lost it with the Mueller report. And I see them making the exact same mistake in their failure to make this the issue it needs to be made in the impeachment. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, just elaborate on what you're saying. You mean that they didn't make a big enough deal, though? They didn't raise the urgency of the Mueller report, and they're not doing it now? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if it's the Mueller report. We have Republican senators and House of Representatives kind of people who were sworn to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And they are not doing that. They are protecting their own asses, to put it bluntly. And they did exactly the same thing with Mueller. Mueller certainly had made a case for, going after Trump and doing this impeachment, which Nancy didn't want to do for obvious, for political reasons. But I'm saying that there is something happened. Let me bring this up before we get into the quid pro quo and all of that. But you know that Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan, who were on the committee and were sitting in on the hearings, were running from the hearings where they were taking notes, which they weren't supposed to do, taking them out of the secure room and running over to the White House and giving everything that happened there to Trump. It wasn't even a story. But these guys are making a decision, right? To help the President of the United States, who was the guy who's being investigated over the fact that the President of the United States was doing something to hurt the American people, national security.
Right.
And I'm saying there's that angle of it that the Democrats just kind of like go, yeah. And the public is going, well, yeah, they all do it because the Democrats are failing at that argument, Matt.
Right. No, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think there's truth to that, but ultimately the impeachment process is about the president and not about,
Well, I think it's about, maybe that's my point. It's more than just the president at this point, because everybody was in on it. I mean, hello? It wasn't like not everybody was in on it. Everybody was in on it, and they're still in on it. And as long as you have, Mark Meadows and a Jim Jordan and all those people going, and Lindsey Graham and Rand Paul and the list goes on and on and on. I mean, they're all in it. They took a vote. They all voted to stick with this dude. They're all complicit. I mean, this really is a crisis. I think the Dems are not making that point.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
So I don't know what they would do.
I don't disagree. I mean, I think they're.
It's the thing. Here, let me say this. Maybe this will help you. The problem is that if you just stay on the one aspect of it, and you don't make the complete immorality of it, if that's the right word. I mean, moral turpitude. I mean, you can go into a whole litany of adjectives to describe their thing. But if you don't do both, I don't think you can beat it, because I think at the core, most Americans are good, virtuous people who really don't like it when norms are broken like this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how normy it is in the sense that, if you know the Watergate committee, they ran back to Nixon with everything. The Republicans did. And, there's a long tradition of sort of,
sticking with your guy up to a point, but this seems beyond what they did in Nixon.
Well, you read about what Fred Thompson was doing. He was calling.
I remember him.
He was calling Haldeman and Ehrlichman all the time with stuff that was supposed to be closed depositions. I mean, I know what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with it, but I can understand the priority of trying to nail down the case against the president.
Well, I think the case is nailed down.
Well, yeah.
Except for one part.
No question, there's a remarkable consistency in the stories, and so.
Well, there's one part that's not nailed down, and maybe that's what we need to talk about. But before we go back to that, let's go back to what did happen yesterday, which is this Ambassador Sondland went and suddenly, I guess he had enough coffee to wake his brain up, and he revised. I think is not the right word. I mean, Hello.
Well, there's no.
Let's take it further than that.
Question.
He lied, and he didn't want to have to hire lawyers to defend him on perjury, and so he went back in and he said what he said. And okay, hello. There was a quid pro quo. Period.
Yeah. Well.
End of conversation.
Yeah, well, I think it's clear. Look, he's an acquaintance of the president. They're not especially close. He's another rich guy, and
bought his way to the ambassadorship. Yeah.
And I don't think he, as at least it appears that he just didn't want to, risk telling any falsehoods on behalf of the president, or at least he got that idea afterwards. But look, you've got all these State Department folks going in telling basically the same story. We saw the transcript, the written account of the July phone call with the Ukrainian leaders. So, I think we have a pretty good sense of the flow here that, Trump keeps pushing this discredited story that the 2016 election was about Ukraine interfering in American election, and that Biden was somehow also not at all proven that Biden was somehow involved with that. So I think we know. We know basics. And look, there's a reason this took off so quickly compared to Mueller, which just went on forever, and then.
Well, again, I think you get back to what I said earlier, keep it simple, stupid, keep it simple. I mean, that's why this is taken off. It was something that people could, latch on to.
Well, also, Mueller did not, find direct Donald Trump collusion, and so it's...
But let me ask you this.
It's a different kettle of fish, and,
So my next question to you was going to be, and now is there a direct connection back to Trump? Because we have that all of these people who are going in for the I don't want to change the word quid pro quo. Let's talk about what it's bribery and extortion. That's what the words quid pro quo actually means. So extortion, bribery, you take your pick which one you want to use, but can you actually now say, the State Department people were doing this, blah 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 blah, and Giuliani, and we'll talk about him in a second, but then is there any proof that the direction came from Trump? Because I think that's where you're going to get the Republicans going next. But you can't prove it was Trump.
On the Ukraine thing?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. That seems, he's on the phone calls to the Ukrainian leaders.
Yeah, but is there that one phone call with the though, right? What was the line? With the comment. Yeah,
but then it seems to be a pretty good line that he wanted the Ukraine ambassador out. He called her bad news.
No, I hear all of that, but I'm telling you that the Republicans are starting to whisper that their next line of defense is you really don't have a direct correlation. Maybe this was coming out of Giuliani and this had nothing to do with Trump. And Giuliani was doing it and you're misreading what was in the quote unquote, I'm going to put quote unquote transcript.
No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I agree. They're pushing that line now. But, first, but they're all over the map. First, they were saying there was no quid pro quo. Then they were saying, so what if there was a quid pro quo?
Right. No, I agree.
And now they're into maybe it wasn't Trump's quid pro quo. Maybe it was just kind of Staff and Rudy.
So read the tea leaves here. So read the tea leaves is what I guess you have to say. So you have a...
Well, I think they're trying whatever sticks,
Yeah,
and one day...
They're throwing the mud.
Yeah, one day it's like it's an unfair committee process. We're going to storm it, and next day it's something else. But
no, I hear what you're saying. I just think that we have to throw that out there because I think that that's important to it all. And
I think their best bet is.
You're going to give them a clue?
If I were Kevin McCarthy, I think their best bet is he did it.
Right.
It's probably not great, but it's not worth throwing him out of office for. That's crazy. It's.
Well, that's what they're throwing out. That's part of their mud right now. Let me ask you a question. Is it worth throwing him out of office?
Is it?
Yeah. What's your thought?
I think when you take it in its totality, meaning the Russia stuff, from Mueller, the fact that Manafort's at the heart of this thing because he was pushing this, this wacky conspiracy theory at the behest of his pro-Russia sidekick over there, the Ukrainian whose name is escaping me at the moment, and the Trump phone calls. That's when I think in its totality, it argues strongly for removing him from office. I think if it were just the phone call and you knew nothing else about Trump, bad, but maybe not enough. But when you throw in all the other Russia stuff and the Manafort stuff
and the Gates, the list goes on and on and on.
And then you have a big sort of unified field theory of this, and that's when I think you get to enough. But that's to satisfy the Matt Cooper standard, No. I
don't think it is the Matt, only your standard. I think that is the reason, because I'm gonna throw this out. Everybody knew it was on the table after Mueller. Whether anybody was willing to act on it or they weren't, they saw the picture. It was clear as whatever. Hasn't Congress seen some of the back stuff that wasn't released to the public now because the judge let them go ahead? So they've seen all of that. They probably knew all that was in there to begin with. So they didn't go into this completely blind. They just knew that they finally had the smoking gun by having that phone call, and that's what they went in. So I guess what my point being that I think at the end that's the build. I mean, that's where they're going with it.
No, I agree. Yeah. I mean, my only point is if this were divorced from Russia.
Yeah,
it was,
right. I agree.
Hunter Biden had a deal in Nigeria, and Trump was trying to lean on the Nigerians and screw Biden. That would be bad, but probably maybe not enough to get him out of office. But when you throw in all the other Russia shit, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, I agree. And then you get to the question of whether or not you're going to be able to pull these Republicans in at the end, and they get some, they get some courage, if that's what it is, or they get some moral.
Oh, yeah, pull in 16, 17 Republicans. Right. No way.
I don't know, no way. I'm not going to say no way. I mean, unless I thought no way, but now I'm starting to think maybe way.
No, you might get a few, in which case you get to a majority, and that's pretty big deal.
Another thing being taught, You were listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern at HalliCasser-Jayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and on all your favorite apps. You can find the Halli Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device, too. Just say, the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at the Halli CJ Show. The other thing that's being tossed around right now by Republicans quietly, by the way, is censure. Because, and that to me is they're bargaining at this point, quietly behind the scenes. And
this was always true in the Clinton impeachment process too, and it's not.
Well, he should have been censured and not impeached, as far as I was concerned, for a sex thing.
Right. I think is not a bad place for them to end up with. You take him to the woodshed instead of the gallows.
So I don't think that's true of Trump, because I think Trump truly is a national security issue. I do. I think that's what. Well,
I agree. I'm just saying, as a Republican strategy, it's not a bad place to end
up. By them throwing that out this early, what I'm saying is they already know. Oh crap! They're already there with oh crap, and they're already freaking out. And then they saw the election last night, and they can spin it any way they want to spin it. Across the nation, it's clear what's going on. That they're losing ground big time, and that's before this thing really even gets to the public hearings. So I'm saying. Those are things that we should be talking about, you and I, as people who are looking at this from the vantage point of, or whatever little expertise I have. You're my great expertise, man. So I think it's powerful to pick up. And then it goes back to what I said to you in the beginning of all of this, which is I think that these Republicans, Nancy needs to make them look like the traitors to the Constitution that they are.
No, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah. I don't.
Let me throw out a couple of other names. Besides Curly Top Rand Paul and his idiocy and the whistleblower. And I understand that Russians took his call at that rally the other night and are starting to throw out the name of this whistleblower and carry on because he did it in public for a reason to talk to his people in Russia, just like Trump did that time with the emails. But I want to throw out a couple of names that are just kind of weird here. Mike Pompeo is on his way to Germany. Hiding in plain sight, no conversation. Right? Mike Pence asked me. He's in it thick as thieves. What do you think with Mike Pence?
Well, yeah, he's certainly been on some of these Ukraine-related calls. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's
like ouch, right?
As they say on the police, on the police procedurals, they say he's a person of interest,
to say the least. Then there's this Lev Parnell, the Ukrainian who changed lawyers and is now cooperating. What do you take of that story?
Well, there's something about a long federal prison sentence that will focus the mind. And
nobody wants to go to the pokey.
You sense that maybe Rudy is not, a brilliant criminal defense lawyer who will get you off. So, you can see that happening.
That story is going to be bigger than people think. Dan, there's a whole thing with these dudes and the whole Florida thing, by the way. This is all going to come back and have some effect on the votes in Florida. Mark my words here. Crazy stuff is going on down here with the head of the Republican committee being tossed, putting new people in. Turns out the governor was involved with this Lev Parnell and his Tweedledum friend. And I mean, down here, this is going to percolate into something. And Scott, Governor Scott, former Governor Scott, now Senator Scott, apparently was involved in all of this as well. Florida will count, and Florida is going to count.
We'll see. I mean, the charges they were, arrested on were screwing around with campaign funds,
right,
in a House race in Texas. So, yeah, we'll see.
Right. But so, what are you feeling about this with Pompeo and Mike Pence? And we can talk about Bill Barr, which we will in a minute. But I mean, none of these people are clean. So what happens? Because a lot of people are pulled into this story.
Right. Well, Pompeo was certainly, involved in the removal of the U.S. ambassador who.
Sure.
So, look, sure. I mean, this is involving diplomacy. These are ambassadors are the tip of the spear on this thing. So he's involved. How much of it was?
Yeah. I guess my point.
I mean,
what? Yeah. Go ahead. Go. You.
Well, I mean, whether he was just trying to humor Trump or, actively aiding and abetting or taking a more passive role, who knows? We'll find out. But clearly, this was not just the president and Rudy. I mean, other people knew about it, and some
everybody knew about it, and I guess
and Bolton seems to have objected strongly
enough to quit.
It's clear that Pence and Pompeo had no such reservations.
So then, this gets back to this is so big. This is so not Clinton. This is so much more than Trump. This is I call them the syndicate. They're like the mafia syndicate. Yeah? Do you see what I mean?
Well,
yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we have to see the degree to which this metastasized. We'll find out more. I think it's still,
you think it's still early?
I think it's still early, but yeah, I think there's strong indications that they were helping goose this thing along. So yeah, and we don't totally know the Rick Perry, former energy secretary thing.
That's kind of a sad story, isn't it?
Secretary.
Yeah, that's kind of sad because he was clean for so long.
Well, yeah, he was. So many people have been diminished by their time in the Trump administration. That was not the case with him. But yeah, as you say, he seems to have been involved in this whole effort to try to get the Ukrainians to investigate Biden. So, it's a fast-moving story. It's got a lot of parts.
Those tentacles are long
I have no idea what it's going to look like in 2 weeks, let alone 2 months. So
let alone
we'll
10
see.
minutes. I say this because I keep thinking this. What if I were one of these sidebars, if you will? If I were a bar and I'd gotten myself entrenched in all of this, what would I do? Would I cut and run right away? Would I stick with it, hoping that somehow it turns out better? I mean, the handwriting is on the wall as far as the dastardly deeds, and these guys into perpetuity are going to be written up in history as being absolute. Oh my God! Right? Why do they stick?
Well, yeah, I mean, Barr is like Inspector Clouseau going around Europe trying to find clues that, the original FBI investigation that led to Mueller's appointment was itself, false and not based on anything. And so he's personally
theory.
Taking a strong hand. He had delegated this investigation to the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut. But now he's taken a very strong interest in himself, and so.
Well, yeah, but he was always on.
That's not the same as the Ukraine, but it may yet become a part of it.
I guess my point is this: they got Trump on the Ukraine thing. They got him. Why stick with him at this point? What's the end game for a Mark Meadows or a Jim Jordan or any of these dudes? Lindsey Graham.
Well, I can't, I can't know their motivations. I mean, I think with Barr, he's
a sicko, if you ask me.
I think he's a huge believer in
there's something mental there.
And presidential power, and he's, much more conservative than people realize, right. And those things have led him to an abject.
But I'm saying in general,
defensive.
Matt. In general.
Yeah, well, I think you know the answer.
No,
right?
Maybe I don't know the answer.
What could possibly separate Jim Jordan from Trump? You
become the hero, and you say, "I'm not going to do this anymore. I made a mistake." America.
Well, you become the hero if you care what the New York Times says. But if you're Jim Jordan and you live in a world of, let's just say vehement supporters of conservative causes, then you're all in, and you're never not going to be all in. I mean, look, Boehner thought these guys were nuts. Boehner thought Jordan was a lunatic.
Oh, that's why he got out. Yeah, no, absolutely, sure. I get that.
Yeah,
I get that. You got more of a hand in Washington than I do. I'm just trying to say, I think there are a lot of people out there who would like. You've met these people. You've talked to the biggest and the brightest and the craziest of them all. You have, Matthew. You have to explain this to people because I don't think they get it. I think Mom, Pa, America is kind of scratching their head going, gee, willikers, I know what I would do in this circumstance, right? And they don't. This kind of, oh my God, I am a conservative Republican or even a Democrat can do it, to the core of me, that's a piece of the puzzle that I think a lot of Americans don't quite understand. Can you help us out here? I mean, you've talked to these, you talk to presidents and vice presidents, God knows.
Well,
that kind of, I pledge allegiance to the party, what is that?
Well, we saw with Nixon and Watergate, there were people who voted against impeachment in the House Judiciary Committee, people who stuck by him till the last day. I think it's...
Is this sickness? Is it a sickness? Is it a mental illness? I'm serious about that.
I think there's a politically advantageous aspect to it. I mean, you've got Fox News kind of beating the drums on this, and these guys come from super conservative districts, and they've got a whole fundraising network based on it, and there's no place for them to go if they turn on that. And so, now, you never know where the evidence goes, and maybe something extraordinary will happen, but I think you should think of it more as tactical smarts rather than, well, in addition to mental health. I think there's something screwy about Jordan.
You think?
Yeah,
yeah. No, I have to. Can I? You know me. I'm always honest, and he absolutely creeps me out. I have a theory about him. You want to hear my crazy theory? Because you know me, I'm so crazy. I'll give you my crazy.
Well, you got the whole Ohio State wrestling thing.
Well, there is that too. But I'm going to say something that probably is so weird. But I gotta. Say.
That's okay. I mean, you're not above a slander charge, so go ahead.
No, you know how he's always appears in public without his jacket on and his tight-fitting shirts?
Oh, right. Famously so, right.
But it's not just that he doesn't wear the jacket. It's the way that he carries himself and the tight-fitting shirts. It's creepy to me. It's creepy to me.
Because you think he's like...
he's parading. He's almost like... how like a cock walks.
Yeah.
And there's a certain sexuality to it that's very peculiar. I'm not the only person who's made that. I've had other women say to me.
Well, sure. People have noticed his sartorial choices and his generally unusual demeanor. I mean, yeah. Well, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not wrong to notice that.
Yeah, no, and I think it's important to make that case there because it is possible for Looney Tunes to be in Congress. Hello, curly top, Rand Paul. But you have to make that. The one who's surprising to me is Mark Meadows, who to a certain degree had a certain amount of
well, yeah, he had sort of a more moderate background and a much more pleasant disposition.
Right.
And so that's been...
The best friend of the late...
Elijah Cummings, right. I think he's considered
But then so did Lindsey Graham. So did Lindsey Graham. So hello. But like I said, getting back to what I said originally, which is there is a certain crazy here that a lot of Americans... in the center in particular, look at and say, I don't get this, because history will not be kind to any of these people. Even if Trump doesn't get booted out of office, he will be impeached. And these guys went down with the ship on that with him. And, there are a lot of people who are questioning who are these people? But then I go back to this. I say, well, who's picking these bozos who go to Congress? Who's picking them? We are.
Right.
There's a mistake going on the part of the electorate that needs to be dealt with, that needs to be addressed. We're going to move on. We're going to move on to election 2020. But we're going to talk first about the infighting that's going on in the Democratic Party because, Matthew, it's getting ugly. I mean, Biden just had a piece and where he went after Warren, rightfully, if you ask me, my way or the highway elitists, he called Warren, and in effect was saying that of the entire left wing of the Democratic Party. Speaker Pelosi has made a big, fat, huge warning. Stop it. Do not move so far to the left. Get off this thing with Medicare for all. I think Warren is on her way down. That's Hallie's opinion. Even, by the way, Jamie Dimon of Wall Street said, what are you people doing? What's your thought here?
Well, I wouldn't say even Jamie Dimon. I'd say,
okay, you're right.
Course,
yes, of course, Jamie Dimon. But he said it publicly.
Not really surprising.
Yeah, but he said it publicly at this point. I thought that was interesting at this particular moment when she was on the
Banker denounces Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
Not
well,
shocking.
I understand. Not shocking, but I wanted to put him in there. But go ahead.
Well, look, it's a politically risky and potentially disastrous position in a general election to support the Medicare for All plan with its abolition of private health insurance. Within the party, still remains pretty popular. I think Warren seems to have made a calculation that she had to go full Bernie on this. And now she's kind of stuck with it. And she put out this plan, which should be in quotation marks, to explain how she paid for it. And it's kind of bullshitty.
Right.
It's got first of all, it's got a lot of cost savings in there that are dubious. And then, It's based on broad. It's based on some taxes that are not going to happen, including a wealth tax. So, look, I agree. She's in an intellectually dubious corner. But, will that slow her momentum? I'm not as sure as you are.
Okay. I do think it's going to slow her momentum, ultimately. And I don't know whether that means that Biden is the one who becomes the candidate. So I don't want to go to say that. I don't think it's either or. But I do think, I think that Nancy put out the word.
Well, there's no question.
And that was really something for her. Yeah, that was really something for her to go there. I thought.
No, that was a big deal.
And I don't think it got enough. That was a big deal. It was a big deal, but I also don't think the press gave it the big deal that it needed to be.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, because it was a big deal, and so I'm immediately after that, the press did something else, which is Mr. Buttigieg became their candidate for the moment, because they're as fickle as can be. The press this we know. So it's changing, and this conversation may be ahead of the change, but I'm going to put my money on it. It's changing. I want to get to Pete Buttigieg only because I thought Jim Clyburn did something incredible the other day when he said old black voters are just not going to vote for a gay man. And since this party's entire election rests on a
he said it was a problem. He didn't.
Well, he's for a political person, that's saying it's more than a problem. If I said it was a problem, then you'd say it was a problem. But when Jim Clyburn put it as "quote unquote" a problem, that was his way of saying, yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a political guy. But I thought that was very amazing that he did that. And I thought, and he's right. Let's call it for what it is. It's that generation, which is the big voting bloc, is just not ready to go there. I mean, he may. Whoops, where'd you go? What was that sound? That was weird.
Well, I was going to say that's probably the case.
Yeah. What's that noise I have from the background there?
I don't know.
Okay. So I thought that was interesting. And I wanted to talk about Amy Klobuchar because she and Buttigieg are on the same lane, really. They're both that moderate candidate.
Yeah, she's poised to have a big moment here, I think. Somebody's going to surge in December from the back. It's either,
Who do you think it is?
As likely as anyone. Well, I wouldn't totally, it's not possible to Yang. It could be Amy. It's probably not Booker, Harris, or I can't even remember who's running at this point. Bennett. It's probably none of them. So, I think Amy's poised to pick up some real steam. Minnesota shares a huge border with Iowa, and I think she can flood the zone with some campaign workers at the end. So, and she's got a good story, and I think she could be. She could definitely be a surprise.
I don't think she's the candidate.
No, probably not.
And who is?
I mean, who knows? I mean, with these things, the odds are against everyone. In other words, no candidate ever has more than like a 1 in 3 chance. So,
but if you were going to bank on somebody, who would it be? My brilliant political pundit.
If I had to bank on somebody, God, I wouldn't want to take that vote. I guess I would say Warren or Buttigieg, but
so you don't think our buddy Mr. Biden pulls it off?
Well, that's my guess, but it's just a guess, and I don't know.
You said Buttigieg or Warren.
Yeah, but I'm just throwing names out. I really don't know. I mean, I think.
Is it too late for somebody to come in out of the blue?
You mean who's not running at all right now?
Yeah.
Technically possible to get on the ballot different places, but tough. but tough. It's hard to see who could do that.
Yeah,
we'll see. Now, you haven't weighed in on Steve Bullock this week.
No, I didn't. I was gonna bring him up. Here's the thing. He's on his way to Florida, and that's the first time I've heard of him going out of state to do an appearance.
Right.
He's going to be in Palm Beach and Miami, and I thought, okay, that means somebody's flushed him with some money here. He's still he's not polling, so to speak, any better than Bennett at this point. I don't think even in Iowa, I don't know what happened there, because originally he was up, and I don't know where he is. I couldn't get numbers. But it does say something to me that he's showing up now on CNN and MSNBC a lot, and he's coming to Florida, which I find fascinating, and maybe he's the dark horse. I'm also thinking of him in an odd way. Don't lose Amy, who's already in the Senate. Don't lose Booker, who's already in the Senate, or Sanders, and have Steve Bullock come in as vice president from a Midwest state, from a state where he actually won a Trump state. He's an interesting character for a vice president. Any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
if Buttigieg gets in, you don't need him necessarily because it's the Midwest, so to speak, Indiana. But if Warren's the candidate, I think the Dems are in major trouble. Major
right.
trouble. That's what I think. I mean, that's the end of the game right there. So I just don't see that happening. I just don't. The party leaders will do what they've done to others, to her.
Could be.
Well, I'm glad to see that you got it in. There's more, but we're going to go because there's will they call Trump to will they call Biden and Hunter to testify? There's the good old Roger Stone trial that's just beginning. I think that's going to be a fodder for the next couple of weeks. There's Trump's tax returns, whether or not the Supreme Court will take that on. But if they don't, hello world, we're about to see some really amazing things. I don't know whether we solved anything this week, Matt.
Right, I don't know if we solved anything.
But we certainly threw out a lot for people to chew on, and we'll see. Anything you want to leave us with for till we speak again?
No, I think we really covered the waterfront. I'm glad you're back. It's great for America, and we'll talk to you next time.
Good night, Gracie.
Night, George.
See ya. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec, LLC. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at hallicasserjayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Until next time, this is Halli Casser-Jayne.